All right. In this video, I'm going to show you how to program your own on-ramp phase to boost your pitching performance. We'll break down the essentials, what an on-ramp phase is, why it's crucial, and how long it should last. You'll learn how to gradually increase your throwing intensity, hit key milestones, and optimize your recovery. We'll cover different training days, low and moderate intensities, with specific routines to follow. Plus, I'll guide you through a 4-week example plan to structure your training to ensure that you're ready to advance. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid plan to kickstart your season and elevate your pitching game. Let's dive in. So the first thing we want to think about when we're making our own on-ramp phase is we want to focus on let's get some key definitions down in here first. So what is a on-ramp phase? It's after low volume throwing and after to define an on-ramping phase, we need to understand some key concepts. So first we want to start off with what is an on-ramping phase. Before we start, I want to let you guys understand what an on-ramp phase is. An on-ramp phase is a period after low volume and low intent throwing where we gradually reintroduce higher workloads following an extended period of reduced training and intensity and volume. This rebuilds our strength and endurance while minimizing the risk of injury. We also program an on-ramping phase after a shutdown period, whether that's due to injury or whether you put on enough innings that it requires an on-ramp shutdown phase, in which we will focus on the same thing, where we work to we will also do this after a shutdown period, after we complete a rest period focusing on regaining our throwing mechanics and rhythm. This phase ensures that athletes do not overload their arms and they can resume throwing activities. We also will use an on-ramping phase to get accustomed to weighted balls or new mechanical cues, whichever is necessary for the individual athlete. We use this phase to adapt to new training tools and techniques such as weighted balls or mechanical adjustments if we need to make them. This ensures proper technique and reduces the risk of injury during integration. So when do we time our on-ramping phase? We typically will do this in the fall after a summer season or a fall season has come to a conclusion. Like it says, after the competitive season has ended, pitchers will need to enter an on-ramp phase in the fall to prepare for the off-season training. This allows for gradual build-up before intense off-season training begins. It can also occur after the post-winter break, depending on your level. So if you're a college guy or you're a two-sport athlete, you got to get ready for the spring to start. You got to make sure that you're getting your on-ramping phase done to ensure that you're primed for the season to start. And how long do we typically have these last? Typically anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks. Usually will depend on how much time you've had off from throwing or how much time you've not been at a high level of intensity. Typically it's around 4 weeks for my athletes, but obviously it will definitely depend on the individual athlete and where they are going into it. So what is our end game what is the end game of the on-ramping phase? When we go into an on-ramp phase, we're looking to build tolerance by building volume and intensity. By gradually increasing volume and intensity, we can safely enhance strength and tolerance, and this prepares us for high-velocity phases or the demands of the season. Our goal is to achieve 90% intent throwing. If we can reach 90% of our maximum effort by the end of the on-ramping phase, we're going to be golden and ready for full intent throwing. This gradual buildup ensures that athletes are ready for high-intensity throwing without risking injury. We also want to develop our chronic workload to establish a consistent and sustainable workload to support long-term performance, and then build this foundation for athletes to maintain their performance throughout the season. We also want to work our main milestone after the on-ramping phase is to complete and recover from 3 hybrid A days. I'll go into hybrid A days a little bit later, but for what we need to know is we want to be able to recover from these types of days because they are a higher intent day towards the end of the on-ramping phase, and that this ensures that we have the endurance and the resilience needed for the demanding training sessions. So what are our workout days? The first and foremost is the recovery days, and these are so vital, and I'm about to tell you why. First, the purpose of a recovery day is, number one, recover. It's right there in the name. We want to prioritize full recovery to ensure athletes are physically and mentally prepared for high-intensity days. By properly recovering, we can prevent injuries and enhance performance during the intense training session season. We also want to work to maintain mechanical development by continuing to refine throwing mechanics with a focus on quality over quantity. This will help us maintain muscle memory and technique without the risk of overexertion. And then we work on maintaining our workload by keeping a consistent throwing schedule and routine. We can contribute to that chronic workload that we talked about earlier without increasing the intensity. This helps in maintaining arm conditioning and overall fitness. Two of the keys to recovery days is we want to maintain a low volume. We want to limit the number of throws to prevent overuse injuries and allow for adequate recovery time. A lower volume also ensures that the arm is not subjected to unnecessary strain. Low intensity is the second key. The second piece is low intensity. By ensuring all movements and exercises are performed at a low intensity to support recovery. Lower intensity helps maintain muscle relaxation, reduces fatigue, and prevents burnout, allowing athletes such as you to stay fresh and ready for the next high session. Okay. The second key is low intensity. We want to maintain our low intensity to ensure that all movements and exercises are performed at a low intensity to support recovery. Low intensity work helps in muscle relaxation, reduce fatigue, and prevent burnout, allowing athletes such as you to stay fresh and ready for the next high-intensity session. So here's what a sample recovery day looks like for us. What we normally will do is our foam rolling routine, our lacrosse ball routine, and whatever dynamic warm-up that you've had set up. We also go into a J-band and wrist weight routine. This is what I do with my athletes. And then our throwing routine starts out with the plyo care balls, where we only do reverse throws and we only do pivot picks. The reason being we want to focus on quality over quantity, as we said earlier. And these are two throws that are the most essential drills, in my opinion, for recovery days because we strengthen our shoulders and we work on that arm action. Then we move into our weighted ball catch play, where we'll do some pivot picks, step backs, or rockers, whatever you've got scheduled, and some roll-ins at low intensity with different balls to work on maintaining that mechanical quality we've been discussing. And then we also go into a light catch after the weighted balls, where we want to make sure that we only go 10 to 25 throws to keep the volume down, and we also don't want to go any further than 90 feet because as most of you guys, 90 feet is not a whole lot of distance, and you can pretty easily get a ball there at a very low effort and intensity. And then we'll go into our recovery after that with rebounders, band pull-aparts, waiter walks, and external rotation exercises. The reason being for a little bit more of this strength component to our recovery is to get a little bit of a stimulus for the muscles that aren't getting utilized as much as they are in the throwing process that they would normally be on a hybrid day or a velocity day. Our next piece is our no-throw recovery days. These are the days typically on a Sunday or on a weekend, depending on how you have it programmed out, where we work on dynamic movements, a full dynamic warm-up as we normally would do it, J-bands, wrist weights, to get blood flow, work and strengthen some core muscle. Okay. The next piece is our no-throw recovery days. These are our days that we will usually mix in for guys who aren't recovering as well, and we usually also put these in for days like off days, right, where we want to work on some things but not actually do a whole lot of throwing. So we'll usually do a dynamic warm-up as we normally have it. We'll do our J-band exercises, our wrist weight exercises as we normally have them programmed. And then we will probably usually go into some reverse throws, and that's about it. And then we cut it off, go right into recovery, and that's usually our day. The purpose of this is we want to get some movement without overexerting ourselves throughout the rest of the day. So the keys to success are low intent to emphasize on the recovery days. We want to maintain our low volume, low intent to allow our bodies to come back. We're preparing ourselves for high intent days further down the line. And then we also want to work on maintaining our level of perceived exertion at about 50% to avoid going over that threshold. Now let's talk about our hybrid days. On hybrid days, these are kind of like our Now let's go into hybrid days. These are the bread and butter of the on-ramping days. So hybrid days combine plyo-carry drills with variations of long toss or catch play, and they're foundational to all other training days in every other one of our phases, and will address general throwing deficiencies and provide essential training reps. The purposes of hybrid days in the on-ramping period are to allow athletes to execute reps at a comfortable rate of perceived exertion while building trust in throwing weighted balls if that's part of your program. The difference between we want to put these in between our high intensity days to serve as fillers between the 100% RPE days later down the line, and will provide quality mechanical mapping reps. And then we also use these for just general throwing deficiencies, so we can address throwing issues that are not necessarily pitching specific, enhancing overall throwing mechanics. So the first type of hybrid day is a hybrid B days. And you can call this whatever you want. That's just my verbiage that I use. So a hybrid B days are typically set between 60 and 70% RPE. We focus on moderate intensity throwing to build strength and endurance, and it's ideal for gradually increasing workload without overloading the arm. Our catch play will only serve to be extension-only long toss, and we want to focus on long tossing to increase distance and arm strength. This focuses on building throwing fitness and improving your throwing mechanics. So we want to be able to work to throw as far as we can, ideally, because if we can throw pretty far, our bodies are going to naturally figure out a way, how can I throw this as efficiently as possible? And then the key benefits are, this is what we use to build our throwing fitness. This is kind of like zone 2 runs or zone 2 rides, like quick jogs. They allow us to expand our floor and our throwing capacity from the bottom up. And then we can work on movement quality, and this provides us a day to focus on refining our throwing mechanics between the high intensity days. So this is our sample hybrid B program, with our full slate of weighted ball drills, should you be doing them, and then our long toss days, and then our post throw days is a little bit different, where we want to focus on banded halos, shoulder rotations, world's greatest stretch, pike to cobras, Cossack squats, and some ER and IR isos. The reason that this is different is we put a lot of effort into the throwing, so we want our recovery to take as much effort away. So we want to focus more on movement quality types things as opposed to strengthening. Now we move into our hybrid A days. These are the days that are going to be 80 to 90% intensity, and you'll see these in the you will see these in the third and fourth week of your programming. You want to build these. These are our high intent days to prepare our arms for game-like situations or a velocity phase. This helps in building the ability to throw at maximum effort while maintaining control. And then the catch play for these days are extension and compression days, where we will combine the extension phase with shorter, more intense throws, which we call our compression days, to simulate pitching at a high level. We use this to balance our arm strength and precision and adapt to various pitching demands. And the key benefits is this is where our intent gets built. This is where we're going to find our way to throw at a high level, whether that's getting ready for a season or getting ready for a velocity phase. And as it stands, same premise, except with the addition of the compression throws there at the end. So how do we program this? So we want to understand the concept of progressive overload. Similar to so the concept of progressive overload is to slowly increase the amount of throwing in order to get stronger and better over time. Think of it like lifting weights. If you lift a little bit more each week, and you will gradually get stronger. For pitchers, this means gradually throwing more and throwing harder. In pitching, this means that we will gradually add throws and intensity to get our arms primed to perform as we go through progress through the phase. And the reason we want to follow this premise is it reduces injury risk, improves performance, and adapts you to higher intensities over time. So our sample 4 weeks, obviously you can do a 2-week or you can do a 4 or 6 week, but I'm just going to do the 4 week just to give you an example. Is we're going to use a hybrid B on a Monday, recovery Tuesday, hybrid B Wednesday, recovery Thursday, and hybrid B on Friday with recovery, and then off day on Sunday. What we're doing is gradually increasing the volume to start out with. Obviously, you see that it goes into week 2. We go hybrid Bs on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we add the Saturday to add that little extra boost of volume towards the end of the week. And then obviously Sunday off. In week 3 is when we really start ramping up the intensity, where we'll go a hybrid B on Monday and on Friday, but then we mix in this hybrid A on the Wednesday, right? So this will give us our 1 day of higher intensity than we've normally been practicing at to prime ourselves for that week, for this obviously penultimate week at 4, where we go hybrid A's on Monday and on Friday, and then we mix in that hybrid B as we talked about earlier. Recovery days on Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, because we want to make sure that we're almost doubling the recovery days from the high intent days. That way we allow ourselves to recover, get ready for the next phase, and get give our body the ability and time to adapt. Now, so that's how you program your hybrid B. What are some other considerations that go into now that we've gone over the schedule for the throwing, let's go into some other considerations for an on-ramping phase, such as weightlifting. So when we go into our weightlifting cycle, we want to focus. Our main focus is to prioritize the weight room to maximize gains during the off season and enhance durability. Because we're not working at a high intensity and so much a high volume early on in the throwing phase, we can spend a little bit extra time on the lifting side. So with reduced throwing stress, we can shift our focus to building size and strength with lower throwing related stress. This phase prioritizes strength and size development to enhance athletic performance. We can increase our calorie intake strategically to support muscle growth and maximize gains, ensuring that you're stronger, better, and prepared for the next phases of training. And then we also want our frequency and balance. We want to focus on lifts 3 to 4 times a week to avoid overtraining and prevent injury and optimize recovery. The frequency and the balance is key. Lifting 3 to 4 times a week with focused intensity, avoiding the trap of overtraining. Many athletes mistakenly believe that more lifting equates to faster progress, but pushing too hard can lead to burnout and stalled development. By allowing ample recovery time between sessions, you give your muscles the chance to grow stronger and adapt, ensuring sustainable gains over the long term. Exercise specificity. We want to emphasize compound movements supporting baseball mechanics. So the compound movements we want to work on are our lower body pushes, which is our squats, leg presses, and lunges. Lower body pulls, which are deadlifts, RDLs, glute bridges. Upper body push, bench press, overhead press, push-ups. And then lower body pull are pull-ups, chin-ups, rows, lat pull-downs. Same thing we talked about earlier with the throwing. We want to focus on a progressive overload by gradually increasing intensity to stimulate continuous improvement. Progressive overload involves systemically increasing the volume and intensity or difficulty of exercises to continually stimulate muscle adaptation and strength gains. For instance, you might progressively increase the weight you lift during squats or the number of reps you perform, ensuring that your muscles adapt and grow stronger over time. One of the big keys is we want to work to individualize our approach. So we want to tailor programs to the athlete's need for optimal performance and prevent injuries. So if you're lacking in lower body strength, we want to add a little bit more of a lower body strength component. And the biggest thing about tailoring your approach in the weight room is you also got to know where you are strength-wise and size-wise. If you're lacking in strength and size, you're probably going to want to bias yourself more to the 4 times a week. But if you're on the higher end of the spectrum, if you're on the higher end of the spectrum when it comes to strength and size, we might want to bias more towards the 3 days a week to optimize our recovery. So here's a standard 4-week lift program that I usually give to some of my athletes, where we go a heavy upper or heavy lower, light upper, light lower, heavy upper, where we've given ourselves plenty of time to recover between the heavy days. And the key difference between the heavy days and the lighter days are, focusing a little bit more on a mobility standpoint on the light lower days, where you see like on the upper body day, we will do a dumbbell incline press supersetted with a half kneeling hip flexor mob to increase our mobility in our hip flexors. We'll do our yoga push-ups, everything like that. So it's a little not typically as strenuous on the light days, whereas on the heavier days they're very more lifting specific with pretty physically demanding exercises. Now let's move into our 3-day-a-week plan. This is for guys that are on the upper end of the strength and size spectrum, where we focus on 3 days a week and everything is going to be full body based. So we're going to do lower body and upper body throughout these lifts. Where, say like on day 1, we go front squat with prone trap raise to increase our shoulder strength. Then we'll move into lower reverse lunges with some DB rows. So you notice that if you go back to the 4-day-a-week and now look at the 3-day-a-week, you'll notice a lot of similarities between the two. But obviously, greater intensity on the full body days versus the lighter intensities on the 4-day-a-week. So finally, we want to wrap up our on-ramping phase for pitchers. Our goal, obviously, is to gradually increase throwing volume and intensity to build tolerance and chronic workload. Our focus is to balance low-intensity recovery days with moderate and high-intensity days, like our hybrid Bs and our hybrid As. And our programming is we'll follow a 4-week plan emphasizing progressive overload and recovery management. Lifting considerations, we want to lift either 3 to 4 times a week to build strength and support throwing mechanics. And then the key takeaways hope you guys take away from this is monitor your recovery closely, use progressive overload, and maintain a balanced training regimen for optimal performance and injury prevention.